name and memory of this town lives on. Right? So he comes to Damascus, age 18. They mention that the first place they visit, him and his father, is it's known as the Masjid of Damascus, but for us it's the Jami Amawi. Have you heard of the Jami Amawi? The Grand Mosque of Damascus. Yeah, from the mosque onto which Isa ﷺ will descend, if you remember this story, right? It's known as Jami Amawi, or the Grand Mosque of Damascus. Yeah. So he visits there, as most people would, because it's the big mosque, and he meets the imam there. He is the imam of that mosque, saying that I've come from Nawa and I would like to learn. So the imam directs him to an important scholar by the name of Farkah. Farkah, that's his name. And Farkah was the Grand Mufti, if you like, of not just Damascus but also of Syria. He's one of the main muftis of Syria, and he was happy to take him as a student, right? But the issue that Imam Nawawi rahimahullah was facing is that the school in which Farkah was teaching did not have any lodging, did not have any accommodation. So Farkah then directed him to another scholar, right? His name, let me find his name. His name is Ishaq ibn Ahmad al-Maghribi is his name. Ishaq ibn Ahmad al-Maghribi. And he was a teacher in another madrasa which had lodging. So he gave him a space there, saying, you can come and stay here. And incidentally then, this place where he stays, the madrasa is known as Madrasa Rawahiyya. This madrasa where Imam Nawawi stayed is where Imam Nawawi decided to stay for the rest of his life. He said, this school gave me accommodation at a time when I needed it the most. So even when he's taken up the positions that he has, he remains in this place, saying, I'm not moving from here. Right? There are also people have given other reasons, but we'll stay here. So he comes, Imam Nawawi rahimahullah comes to Damascus at the age of 18, and he studies under these two scholars. Both of them are leading Shafi'i scholars and are students of again leading Shafi'i scholars. So if you may have heard of Izz ibn Abdus Salam, he's considered a mujaddid of his time for many people. Farkah was one of his students. Yeah, so Farkah can be seen as the heir of Izz ibn Abdus Salam. And we've got Ishaq ibn Ahmad al-Maghribi was a student and assistant to a scholar by the name of Ibn Salah. Ibn Salah also was a scholar, and whose piety also was along the lines of Imam Nawawi rahimahullah. Yeah. Scholars have written regarding Ibn Salah that he never sinned. Now, whether this is true or not is another story, but it's an expression that he was like an angel. Like this, right? We're not saying that he's infallible by any chance, right? So Imam Nawawi rahimahullah, I've put here, he has 2 years of intense study because he says that about himself. But otherwise, his studies lasted about 6 years. And what's so unique about his studies? Well, he says that he memorized the Tahdhib in 4 months. So this is a book in fiqh. He memorized the whole thing in 4 months. And then he spent the rest of his year memorizing a quarter of another book. So this is a huge book in fiqh. He's memorized it all. Also, he said during those 2 years he never slept. Yeah, and you might be thinking, how does this work? So what the wording actually says is, he says, my back never met the floor for 2 years, meaning that he'd study, and when he could no longer bear it, then he'd just nap on his books, and then he'd wake up and he'd say, Inna lillahi wa inna raji'un, I've wasted too much time, and he'd start studying again. This is the level with which Imam Nawawi rahimahullah was studying. Not only that, he said that he used to take 12 lessons a day, right, from different mashayikh in different mosques. Now you need to think about this, right? If he's studying 12 lessons and one lesson is per hour, is an hour, let's say, and he mentions that every lesson he would prepare, he would write the notes, and he would review them and revise them. How long do you think it would take to make notes for one lesson? Let's say an hour, yeah? Do you think I'm realistic, an hour? So 12 times 2 is 24 hours, that's his day gone then. His day has gone there. And we know that he only ate once. He would have one session for eating. He would eat only once in every 48 hours, and he would drink only once every 48 hours. Right? And when he ate, what is it that he was eating? He was eating stale bread and jam that his father would bring from Nawa. He wouldn't eat fruits because he felt that they were makruh, and I will come to this in a moment. And he felt to combine more than one dip. So it was jam. They call it dabas. It's made usually from figs and from olives, like a dip, if you like, right? Like a hummus dip type thing. So it would be bread, stale bread, and it would be what? This dip. So he used to consider combining more than one dip as israf, as extravagance. He would say, no, this is extravagance, right? Somebody presented him with a cucumber. He said, I fear that if I have this cucumber, then it will moisten my body and I'll feel lazy. I'll want to sleep. Let me be like this. And even the water he would drink it around suhoor. And he would make sure that it's not too cold. Keep it warm, like this. So somebody who's exerting himself to this level. Think about it for a second. Yeah, I'm not saying that we should become like Imam Nawawi rahimahullah, but we should take what inspiration from this. That he is someone who's devoted himself. Yani, I'll go to the extent in saying, if this is jihad, this is jihadun nafs, right? If jihad means for someone to exert himself the utmost that he can, then what is this? If this isn't jihad, then what is it? He's devoted himself to that extent, right? Imam Nawawi rahimahullah, 6 years he studied like this, and then he goes on the Hajj. And regarding the Hajj, his father mentions that when he left Damascus, he was ill, all the way up to Arafat, and it was what we call Hajj Akbar in our language, where the Yawm Arafat was on a Friday as well. And he said he had a severe fever, and until he came back, he wasn't well. But throughout the trip, he did not even say oh or oof once. This is what his father says. His father said, I noticed that he was ill. He made the entire Hajj ill, but he never once complained, neither said oof or oh. And he says, his father said that when he came back to Damascus, I felt Sabballahu alayhi al-ilmu sabba, that Allah had poured the ilm in his heart, sabban, and a huge amount of knowledge was given to him as a result of this. Through this what? Patience. Through this patience. And I often reflect on this. When we go on Hajj, I can give you a list of complaints. Right? Everyone goes on Hajj. They have a catalog full of complaints. Here's Imam Nawawi rahimahullah, who's had a difficult Hajj, right? But never once did he utter a word. Continued to persevere until he comes back. Right? He comes back. And he mentions over here that he started teaching at the age of 24. Imam Nawawi rahimahullah started teaching at the age of 24. And I put writing there, but it's more realistic that he started writing around 660. And this is based on his own writings where he mentions this, right? So at the age of 29, he taught and wrote for 21 years. For the rest of his life, he taught, right? And he amongst the many posts that he served at, I think this one is the important one. Darul Hadith al-Ashrafiyya was considered the most prestigious seat of learning at the time in Damascus, especially for Hadith. It was founded by Al-Malik al-Ashraf. That was his name, Al-Malik al-Ashraf. So this is something in the past. What they would do is they would name the institution based on the person who gave the endowment for the land, like that. So Al-Malik al-Ashraf, he was known as, he was an Ayyubid Sultan, and he was Sultan Salahuddin Ayyubi's nephew. Darul Hadith Ashrafiyya, very important one, served by many important scholars, right? So this is in short Imam Nawawi rahimahullah's life. What other things can we deduct? What can we extract from this? Well, we talked about his youth and the intensity with which he studied. We can say that aspirations, dedication, aspiration is something that definitely comes through. Other thing we can see is steadfastness. Imam Nawawi rahimahullah was steadfast. He had istiqamah. And what else can we take from this? His we said patience, perseverance, and his overall zuhud meaning what? His piety. He would spend the entire night in tahajjud. See, the thing we see about Imam Nawawi rahimahullah, and just to summarize a little now, I've through my readings of history, I've rarely found an individual, especially after, let's say, around the 6th century, whom all of the ummah is in praise of. Yeah? This rarely happens, where the entire ummah, by and large, unanimously are in agreement upon this person's piety and also his scholarship. This is a rare feat, but Imam Nawawi rahimahullah is there. He's up there as one of these individuals. So he's a rare case, right? So if we take the 3 areas or the 4 areas in which Imam Nawawi rahimahullah served, in all of them you can see that he's 100%. So in terms of ilm, we saw a minute ago, through this we can see he's 100%. And even in ilm, in hadith or in fiqh. In fiqh, he's a very important scholar in the Shafi'i madhab. He's considered one of the authorities of the Shafi'i madhab, even though he might not be the most knowledgeable Shafi'i scholar. He wrote in hadith, and of his hadith works is a commentary on Imam Muslim, Sahih Muslim, which is read till today. And what are the works of his? Riyadus Salihin. It's rare to find a mosque or a library in which you won't find a copy of Riyadus Salihin. Riyadus Salihin is, again, Imam Nawawi is not the greatest muhaddith. There are muhaddithin who are greater than him in hadith. Yet there is something about Imam Nawawi rahimahullah which has awarded him acceptance, to the degree that I'm saying that it's rare to find a mosque in which you won't find Riyadus Salihin. And to my knowledge, I'm not aware of a language which is spoken today in which there isn't a copy of Riyadus Salihin in that language, in translation. Any language you can probably think of, all the major languages is translated. And again, the same can be said for the 40. Imam Nawawi is 40. Imam Nawawi rahimahullah is 40. I mentioned last week or the last session about a French magazine stating that the bestseller in French, in the Francophile world, in the Francophonic world, was the top 3 was in Imam Nawawi's Arba'in. Who would have thought? Do you think Imam Nawawi had the wildest idea that his book is going to be the bestseller in French? Imam Nawawi's Arba'in? No, he didn't. But there is definitely something about Imam Nawawi rahimahullah that has awarded him this. Right? His book on Adhkar, which is taught over here by Sheikh Sulaiman Van Elle on Sundays. It's a beautiful book. Again, it's not the best book in Adhkar, there are other works, but it's so famous in the Arab world that they have a saying, Bi'id dar washtari al-adhkar. Meaning, if you don't have a copy of the Adhkar, sell your house and buy a copy of the Adhkar. Okay? Sell your house and buy a copy of the Adhkar. Right? They say that he never wasted a second. Imam Nawawi rahimahullah never wasted a second in his life. Even when he was walking, he'd be looking into a book, or he'd be reading the Quran, or he'd be making zikr, or he'd be making awrad, but never wasted a second of his life. He made sure that every second of his life was spent in ibadah. So this is his zuhud. So along with his ilm, what do we find? We find taqwa, we find tahara. And then I want to talk about his responsibility as a scholar in enjoining in good and forbidding the evil. So we have correspondence. Imam Nawawi rahimahullah wrote to the rulers of his time. He wrote to Zahir Baybras, the Mamlukid ruler of his time, a number of letters commanding him to do good and forbidding him to be evil. And he wrote it very well. And some of the advice that he gave was harsh. And it was advice that the king was not going to be happy about. And yet he wrote to the king. And the king wrote back to him with abuse. And so Imam Nawawi wrote back to him again. There's a famous story that the king summoned him, the sultan summoned him, saying that there's a fatwa which everyone has signed, why have you not signed it? Sign it. Imam Nawawi says no. Right? And again, if you saw Imam Nawawi rahimahullah, based on what we spoke about him, he used to dress in the dress of the villagers, because we see that he's not from a rich background. So he used to wear the amama known as a subukhtaniya of the farmers and peasants of Nawa. This is what he would wear. So he came average looking person, and he is in the court of the king, saying to the king, I ain't going to sign your fatwa. And so the king said, who is this person? Dissolve him of any of his royalties. And if I'm giving him any money, then we need to relieve him of any of this, any largesse that he's receiving or any posts. So they said to the king that he doesn't receive anything from the state. He doesn't receive anything from the state, and he's this Imam Nawawi rahimahullah, right? So the wazirs of the king were all surprised that the king did not kill Imam Nawawi rahimahullah, that he let him go. And one of the stories that I mentioned is that when the king is asked that you let him go, he said that I was scared of him, I feared him. So he's a simple looking person, right? He has nothing on him, but essentially what was it? That a king like Baybaras, who drove the Mongols away and who battered the Mongols, and he took over he's scared of a frail looking man in simple clothes. This is Imam Nawawi rahimahullah. So in Amr Ma'ruf as well. So look, in all three areas, in scholarship, right, in piety, and also in his responsibility as a scholar, and also his correspondence with fellow ulama. Right? He has very harsh things to say about bid'ah, about innovation. Again, some of the karamat that are mentioned about Imam Nawawi rahimahullah. So, I mentioned that he never had fruit. He never had fruit. And this is despite the fruit of Damascus being famous. Yeah, fruit of Damascus is very nice. But he never ate from that fruit because he felt that the land in which it was cultivated was a land of endowments, what we call awqaf. And the awqaf land is primarily for the poor people, for the orphans. But this land is being used by farmers and then it's being sold. So in fiqh, there's a question over here that can you benefit from lands which belong to the awqaf and which are supposed to be the privy of the property of the orphans, and they are the ones who should be extracting and benefiting the profits from this. So for this reason, Imam Nawawi says, I'm not going to eat fruit because there's shak in this. There's shak in this. And so as I mentioned, he lived off the stale bread, and he lived off jam that would come from home, from Nawa. This is the life that he spent. And there's a nice anecdote that's mentioned, is that near the end of his life, he asked for an apple. He wanted to see an apple. What does apple look like? Right? And they say he wanted to eat it, but he left it. So near the end of his life, the way he passes away is he felt that he's old enough now, and Wallahu alam, he saw signs that the time is near. So he bids his students farewell, and he goes back to his village in Nawa. So there's a story that his auntie visits him in his house, saying, what are you doing with this apple? Right? He says, inshallah, I will eat it. And then he passed away. And then his auntie saw him in the dream, saying, what did Allah do to you? He says, Allah, He elevated my status, and the first thing He gave me was an apple to eat.